Hello and welcome to a different episode of the podcast. It is exactly the end of season review for the 19 to 20 season here on the Baggies podcast. It's going to be a different style because it's a bit more narrative and it's actually scripted. I've written the script myself and you'll notice it doesn't quite tie in with the rest of our episodes, so there's no episode number. It's a one-off episode, so it's just on its own. And hopefully you guys will enjoy this because it's a different episode and I've been working quite hard on it. So hopefully you guys will have a good time listening and you can relive all your favourite memories, and also you guys have come in and put in your favourite memories for the end of the podcast, so stick around for that. And it's a bit more narrative, so without further ado, let's get into West Bromwich Albion, the story of our season 2019 to 20. On the 13th of June 2019, Slaven Bilic was appointed as the manager of West Bromwich Albion, only 30 days after West Brom's playoff defeat against rivals Aston Villa. The fans were determined to see the club sent into the promised land of the Premier League. Bilic was brought in on a 2-year deal, taking up the position at the Albion after managing Croatia, West Ham and Lokomotiv Moscow and Besiktas. The 2-year contract was given with the aim of promotion. After friendly games against Villarreal, Scunthorpe, Rotherham and Bournemouth, the Baggies were gearing up for their first game against Nottingham Forest. Forest were tipped for promotion after appointing former Stade Rennais manager Sabra Lamouchi. The Baggies fans were excited to see the shape and personnel of Bilic's first competitive game in charge. However, when the lineups were announced, as well as giving debuts to new signings Semir J, Filip Kravinovic and Kenneth Zohor, Slaven Bilic also handed a taste of first-team football to 18-year-old Nathan Ferguson. Bilic was handed the perfect start as West Brom manager, with 2 mistakes from Forest's on-loan goalkeeper Arijanik Muric, giving the Baggies a 2-1 win and a victorious start in this new era for the Albion. After a draw against Millwall on the first home game of the season, it was time to face newly promoted side Luton Town away at Kenilworth Road. Going 1-0 down after 15 minutes, up stepped West Ham loanee Grady Diangana, who scored 2 goals in only 45 minutes after coming on as a substitute. However, the next 2 games weren't all plain sailing, with consecutive 1-1 draws against Reading and Derby, both needing late Kenneth Zohor penalties to salvage points. A change was needed in the Baggies lineup, something different, someone who could change the game with just a couple of moves. The game against Blackburn came up and Mateus Pereira came in for Filip Kravinovic start match award in his first ever start at the Hawthorns. Then came another pivotal clash, this one away at Fulham, and after coming down the previous season, Fulham would be desperate to beat us and to get themselves back up into the Premier League. And even after taking the lead through Anthony Knockaert, that wasn't to be, as Semir J came and headed in an equaliser and his first Baggies goal after signing for £1.5 million from Rotherham in the summer. The Baggies then went and had a great 2 games, with a 4-2 win against Huddersfield with 2 goals for Matt Phillips and another for Ajayi, and a first Baggies goal for Darnell Furlong. Then came a game against QPR which ended 2-0 thanks to a first Baggies goals from both Nathan Ferguson and Mateus Pereira at Loftus Road. After that, there was a huge game on the horizon for the Baggies against Leeds United. With both clubs suffering promotion setbacks last season, there was bound to be a strong will to win in this one. However, our 9-game unbeaten run came to an end at the hands of the Ellen Road occupants. A goal from Etgan Alioski proving to be the difference between the 2 sides. A disappointing defeat to say the least. But a trait of a good side is how you bounce back after that kind of defeat. The Baggies did so in perfect style, beating Cardiff 4-2 and Charlie Austin getting his first goal for the club since signing from Southampton in the summer. This sparked a chain reaction and resulted in a 14-game unbeaten run lasting until the 29th of December. The most notable results in this run included a 4-1 hammering of Bristol City, in which Pereira scored a beautiful curving lifted free kick. Another victory worth noting in this spell was a 5-1 thrashing of future playoff hopefuls Swansea City. Although by score margins those were the 2 outstanding victories, the game against Birmingham City would be one we'd all look back on towards the end of the season. A derby game in which we went behind twice, but thanks to 2 goals from super sub Charlie Austin, including a goal of the season winning strike, to get an ever valuable 3 points at the hands of our rivals Birmingham City at the St Andrews Trillion Stadium. However, after draws against Barnsley and fellow promotion chasers Brentford, the unbeaten run came to an end with a disappointing 2-0 loss against Middlesbrough. That loss against Borough proved to be put behind us quickly, as only 3 days later we would play Leeds United, who at the time were the only team giving us a real battle for automatic promotion. The game was hotly anticipated, with Leeds bringing almost 2,000 away fans. But the Baggies were handed the perfect start after only 2 minutes as the ball was pinged around the box and Semir J got a toe on the ball to score the opener. However, Ajayi turned from hero to villain as Patrick Bamford flicked a header on and Ajayi deflected into his own net for an own goal. Unfortunately, this was to bring a rotten vein of form for the Baggies, drawing at Charlton and losing to Stoke and Cardiff, but winning both FA Cup clashes in between against Charlton and Premier League West Ham. But this poor run of form was ended with consecutive 2-0 victories against Luton and Millwall, followed by a 2-1 win against Reading. Then we played Nottingham Forest, who were looking for automatic promotion themselves. Looking but not finding, as we've discovered towards the end of the season, and Forest snatched a point with a late Matty Cash goal. Until that burst of results came to an end with a 1-0 loss against an ever-organised Wigan Athletic. We were then knocked out of the FA Cup at the hands of Premier League Newcastle, followed by a 0-0 draw away at Swansea City. But then the unthinkable happened. Football across the world was halted and a lockdown was implemented across the UK, with players forced to complete training regimes from home. And the season was plunged into uncertainty, with West Brom sat in an automatic promotion place. As lockdown kept on going, football's return was incredibly uncertain. Would the season be ended on a points per game basis, or would they play on behind closed doors? In the end, the latter was chosen, and we would pick up where we left off and play our home games against Birmingham City. With 9 games left, the race for promotion was on. The stakes were high, and Albion stuttered out of the blocks, drawing 0-0 with Birmingham City and unable to break down their highly organised defence. The next game was against Brentford, who at the time were Albion and Leeds' only real threat to the top 2 spots. You felt that if the Baggies won this, they'd be well on their way to the Premier League. However, that wasn't to be, with Ollie Watkins scoring the only goal of the game to keep Brentford the win and to keep the automatic promotion race very, very interesting. The Baggies then bounced back with a 3-0 win against Sheffield Wednesday, a 4-2 win against Hull City and a 2-0 victory against Derby County at home. Meanwhile, Brentford, who were still in 3rd place, continued to pile pressure by winning all of their games since the restart. The Baggies certainly didn't help themselves, drawing the next 2 games against Blackburn and Fulham. And we could perhaps call ourselves fortunate not to have lost either of those. 2 games left. The deal was this: win them both and you're up, regardless of what Brentford do. Being the Albion, they couldn't do this the easy way, losing the following game 2-1 against Huddersfield. Probably the Baggies' worst game of the season. A lack of passion and desire, the problem in the dressing room. For the first time this season, promotion was out of our hands completely. If Brentford win their last 2 games, we'd be playing in the playoffs again. But out of nowhere, there was hope. Stoke City had beaten Brentford 1-0, a classic Stoke performance, with Nick Gregory getting the only goal of the game. The terms again, simple. Win against QPR on the final day of the season, and you're up. Brentford was set to play Barnsley, who would be likely to fight tooth and nail for survival as they were in the relegation zone. The game started off well for the Baggies, piling on pressure in the early stages, until QPR's Ryan Manning struck home for them to put Baggies 1-0 down and to take them out of the top 2 for the first time since October, with Brentford still drawing at Barnsley. But then Barnsley took the lead against Brentford. Callum Styles has just scored. Grady Diangana then scored for the Albion to equalise only a minute before half-time. Straight after half-time, Grady Diangana produced another moment of magic, beating 2 defenders and crossing for Robinson to tap home. Robinson being the player that had been playing up front for the first time this season, a gamble by Slaven Bilic. The game was then turned on its head, with QPR's star player Eberezi Eze scoring a beautiful finish over Sam Johnston. Josh Da Silva then scored for Brentford to put that game on level terms, with them needing another goal to overtake Albion, until Clark Udder scored in the last minute to save Barnsley and to send West Bromwich Albion up. The Championship never ceases to amaze as the Baggies waited in anticipation for the final whistle in the Brentford game. But then it was all over. Albion had put all doubters aside and celebrations commenced. They were up. Fans congregated outside the Hawthorns and the players rejoiced. Albion were up and the Premier League awaits. So that is the story of our season, West Bromwich Albion 2019-20. But we've now got some different aspects of the podcast to do. I have asked 3 West Bromwich Albion fans who got in contact with me. Actually, a few more. There are a few more. Actually, 5 who have got in contact with me, and I've asked them some questions regarding the season, regarding next season. So we're going to have a look at those, and we're going to take a look at what the fans have had to say. So firstly, we're going to go to Twitter user FTBL_Joey, and I asked the same series of questions for each fan. Number 1, out of 10, what would you give our season? Number 2, which was your favourite match and why? Number 3, what was your favourite moment and why? 4, who was your favourite player this season? 5, who was your most underrated player this season? 6, who's the best signing this season? And 7, your prediction for next season. So, Joey says he'd give our season an 8.5. Number 2, Bristol away was his favourite game. Lucky enough to be there, and a perfect performance apart from the Sawyers red card. Number 3, probably the moment we got promoted. I was ecstatic for a whole week after. Number 4, although Mateus Pereira has been incredible for us this season, it has to be Jake Livermore, a real improvement on last season and a real captain and leader this season. Number 5, the most underrated player is Townsend. Been great since Gibbs got injured and really goes under the radar. Number 6, Mateus Pereira is a best signing, no doubt. Number 7, hopefully we can avoid relegation by finishing 16th. So that is what Joey thinks. Thank you very much for getting in touch. Next is Tyrell. I've asked him the same question. What would you give our season? So number 1 is 9 out of 10. Bristol City away showed real fight, passion, showed the real quality of the team. Number 3, the last game of the season where the players all came together. It showed how much it meant for them as players as much as the fans. Tyrell couldn't pick between Pereira or Livermore. Livermore because of the passion he showed in all of the games and the leadership. Mateus Pereira is the best player Albion have seen in the last few years and took games into his own hands many a times, absolutely. Number 5, Connor Townsend came in for Gibbs, didn't put a foot wrong and had some excellent performances. Number 6, Mateus Pereira is the best signing of the season, of course, £8 million, I can't believe we got him for that. And Tyrell thinks we're going to be finished between 13th and 16th place this year. So let's go and have a look at what Twitter user C Hawthorns thinks. He's written a lot, which is fantastic. So firstly, although we managed to achieve promotion, for me we personally drew too many games. We fell apart over the Christmas period and we're lucky to stay in the top 2 really. So he's saying 8th, overall promotion is great, but didn't feel like we got out of second gear for a percentage of games. 1 up front isn't how I'd set us up. Number 2, his favourite match was Swansea at home for obvious reasons. I believe we should have been close to the standards set in that game for the majority of the season, but we rarely achieved that if I'm honest. The players were all on the same frequency that game, and the football was fluid and incisive. That is what we expected from the quality of the squad and the quality inside it. Number 3, his favourite moment was the Pereira free kick against Bristol City. The little dink from the edge of the box, yes, we talked about that earlier on in the episode. Audacious effort, nobody expected it, pure natural ability, and no doubt the best player in the Championship. Absolutely, 100% agreed. Tough one. He's been impressed with Dean Garner and Ajayi. Livermore was exceptional until after lockdown. Pereira has exceeded expectations, but he thinks Livermore has been the most consistent and the most improved on last season. He thinks Townsend did a great job after Gibbs was injured again. He's not everyone's cup of tea. Many think he's not a top-level Championship player, but was solid when he came in. Sawyers gets a lot of problems for slowing us down too much, but I personally feel we play him too deep, and he would prefer to be more effective further forward. Difficult to argue against Pereira's ability rise, but I can say value for money as Ajayi, and I can see him making the steps up to Premier League football without too much trouble. He also says he supposes that for question 7, he supposes we are expected to be about around the bottom 6 or 5 places for the large parts of the season. If we don't recruit sensibly, then that's exactly where we end up. The current squad will not be strong enough to regularly compete at top level, and a goalkeeper is absolute must. As much as Foster would save us 10 points a season, I think so. I would take Ben Foster back in a heartbeat. For me, best keeper over probably the last 10 years for me. Austin and Kanu won't cut it at the top level. We are desperate for pace, as shown up front by playing Robinson up front against QPR. A box-to-box midfielder with an engine. Andy Johnson, like in his prime. Fullback and a commanding centre-half, signed Karavinovich and Diangana or similar. I think that's probably the limit of our budget. We'd love to see Eberizi Eje for QPR coming to us. We'll be interested to see if Billets can outthink top-level managers in the Premier League without the same budgets as the top-level managers. Now it's time to hear what Paul Garbett1960 said about the questions that I asked a variety of West Brom fans. So, number 1, he gives an 8 out of 10 for the season. His favourite match was Blues away, a character shown with the 2 goals from Austin. 3, the Brentford result being confirmed at the end of the season against QPR. Promotion secured. Number 4, best player of the season, Pereira. Townsend's been his most underrated player, although he doesn't think he's good enough for the Championship. Also, 6, Ajayi is his signing of the season. Number 7, all depends on our signings. Unless we sign very well, I cannot see us surviving. We need a top-class keeper and a striker. If we make some key signings, we can achieve third quartile. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all about who we sign here, because if we don't sign well, we'll end up in the relegation zone, or maybe if we're lucky, we'll do a Villa, not spending 150 million though, and we'll end up surviving by the skin of our teeth. But if we do invest well, we could end up, perhaps 15th, 14th, something like that. Good thing to build on. Maybe get up into the top half of the table next season. So now it's time to hear what Sean Handley says about this season. So he would give our season a 9 out of 10. His favourite game was Bristol City away. He thought the fans were amazing. The last 5 minutes against QPR were his best moment as we won promotion. Number 4, Pereira's his player of the season. Number 5, the most underrated was Semi Ajayi. Number 6, the best transfer of the season was Pereira. And number 7, his goal is to avoid relegation, finish 10th to 15th. Thank you very much for all the Baggies fans who got involved in this episode and all the listeners who have got involved. It's always a pleasure to have your input, and hopefully next season we'll do lots more of fan reactions and things like that for you guys to enjoy. Hopefully you've enjoyed this episode, you've enjoyed reliving the moments of our season, the promotion winning season as well, and hopefully you've enjoyed the episode. It's not been your normal episode, not really going through any news or anything from the past week. It's been the past season crammed into about 20 minutes of footage. So if you've enjoyed, make sure you, if you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, make sure you download the episode, you follow us on there, and also on YouTube if you subscribe and drop a like on the video. And hopefully you've enjoyed West Bromwich Albion, the story of our season 2019-20. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
The Baggies Podcast on YouTube, giving you the latest news, views and opinions on all things Albion. Join me every week for a new episode of the Baggies Podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube.